Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about the 2020 TPI, and now that I've owned this bike for about 6 months, I want to talk about some upgrades, some mods, and some issues that I've had now that I've had a few hours riding the bike. Okay, let's get into it by starting with must-have upgrades, and the first thing is the skid plate. These KTM Husqvarna TPI bikes do not come with a skid plate. I think I just went with the KTM Power Parts one for the time being. The dealership had it. They gave me a good deal whenever I bought it, and it seems to work out pretty well. I know for the XCs and the bikes with linkages, there's probably some better products out there, but with the PDS on this particular bike, the KTM one seems to give me enough coverage. The second upgrade is definitely any type of handguards. So this is probably one of the #1 upgrades for any single bike, but definitely with the TPI bikes, highly recommended before you go out and ride. The third upgrade, I would say, is probably radiator guards. So I went with the black bulletproof design radiator guards, and I'll put a link to those and all of these products actually in the description. So check those out. There you go. They look pretty good. I think they're probably the best made ones in the business, and definitely for these TPI bikes. The fourth upgrade that I would highly recommend doing is a TPS cover. So again, bulletproof design. It's a little pricey for what it is, but man, it can save you. The one that comes stock on it is just plastic, not really that high of quality, could easily get punctured, and this is a huge upgrade. The next one, which I don't have on there, is this fitting. So I think this happened in 2019 that they changed it over to like this plastic one. There's a couple sites that sell them. You can get a metal one, much higher quality. So I'm gonna pop this one off, put it in my bag for riding, so if anything happens to the other one, you have a backup while you're out there. The next upgrade actually comes from one of the biggest issues I think with these TPI bikes, and that's the idle adjustment screw right in here. So this makes it really nice. My bike particularly had the issue. It was idling so low. I'd be coasting down a hill with my clutch pulled in, and my bike would just turn off unless you were giving it a little bit of gas. I don't think that's the way it should run, and that was a $25 fix. A little bit of work, tear apart your throttle body and everything, but definitely worth it. Another one that I think is really important for any bike, especially enduro riding, is a fan kit. Again, these bikes don't come with it. This is just the KTM Trail Tech one, but I do like that it has the digital gauge on it, so you know exactly how warm your bike is, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Same thing as the standard Trail Tech one though. The last must-have upgrade is actually the rear tire. For me, and the type of riding I do and where I live, I went with the IRC VE33S. And some of the guys I rode with, I know tried out the non-S version, and all of them came back and recommended this one. The durability on it is great, the traction on it is great, and it just seems to grip to everything around here. Mud, rocks, you name it, it's perfect. The one thing I haven't done yet is a new front tire. I also don't think these are very good, so I need to upgrade that. And going along with the tires, and tubeless, mooses, anything like that are a great option as well while you're changing them out. All right, moving on then to my recommended upgrades. A couple small things, nothing that you really need. I went with these push button fork bleeders. I think they're Motion Pro ones. They just make it easy. You don't have to unscrew anything, one less tool to carry. It's pretty great. Put your bike up on the stand, push the buttons in, you're done. The next one is kind of straightforward. We'll say there's 2 of them here. Extra air filters, extra spark plugs. Not really an upgrade, but I had some issues with my bike fouling spark plugs. Guess it was running a little too rich, so having a couple extra of those, and then just extra air filters makes maintenance a little bit easier. Another upgrade I will definitely recommend, I know there's mixed opinions about this, but a pipe guard. So I went with the P3 max coverage pipe guard. It's got probably a little more coverage, I guess max coverage, than their standard one. It seems pretty nice. I dented my pipe on like my second ride, just dropping my bike. And to me, the benefit is there. It seems like a no-brainer to put it on. I know some people say that, you know, this will bend right here coming out of the engine. Maybe, probably. Either way, you know, it's if you spend the $200 on the pipe guard or $200 on another pipe, my thought process is the pipe guard will take a lot more hits and allow me to get more life out of my pipe. Who knows? I recommend it. Rocks are hard and they put a lot of dents in it. This next one is all personal preference, but I went with this Clean Speed brake pedal, and I accidentally bought this large extended one, and it turns out I quite like it. It's definitely a lot longer, or wider, I guess, that way. I've hit it by accident a couple times, but it's also saved me a couple times. It's just really easy to find. It has more grip than the stock one too, so check out Clean Speed. I think they have a lot of great options. And my last recommended upgrade is just the oil cap here. I like the metal one. The plastic one I would feel like would crack, so I think this is a Tusk one. It was like 10 bucks. Again, not really needed. If you need to get that free shipping from somewhere, throw it in there, extra $10, or just have it as a backup. The last recommendation I'll talk about is a new exhaust pipe, and that's primarily if you need a spark arrestor. I know the FMF pipes are great, and they do come with the spark arrestor, so if you're riding anywhere where those are required, take a look at that. I know there's some inserts you can put into the stock one, but I've seen some very negative reviews about those. All right, so let's talk about issues. The first one I already mentioned, and that's the idle being too low on these TPI bikes. Pretty simple fix, $25, $30, whatever the part is. You buy that idle adjustment screw, take apart your throttle body, put it in there, and you can get some real adjustments, not the screw that a lot of people believe actually adjusts that. That's just changing your butterfly. It's an issue. I know it's great, and why they put it in there on TPI, or it doesn't come stock on TPI bikes for those emission controls, but change it while you can before they find a way to just keep that in there and lock it in. The second issue I've actually made a video about already, particularly about my bike, is the bad crankcase pressure sensors. So they're right up here in the body. Bikes have been reported to be running rough, sputtering at like 1/8 to a quarter throttle. And it could be a bike with 50 hours, it could be a bike brand new off of the showroom floor. Mine happened about 12 hours, I think, when I first noticed it. And you swap out the sensor with a new one, or you can swap it with the ambient sensor on the other side, because they're actually the same sensor, to do a test if you'd like. The replacement is about $40. Not sure what they are around the rest of the world, but probably a good idea to pick up a spare. The third issue that you see a lot with these TPI bikes is the power valve leak. So on the other side, where the power valve is, some oil will come out of that. For some people, it seems like it's been pretty bad. Sometimes it's a very minor leak, but it's been around for a couple years now, and KTM still hasn't addressed it. So I think I've seen reports of it on the 2021s as well. Obviously an issue on some 2020s and 2019s too. So KTM, it's been a couple years, fix it. The fourth issue is actually one I've experienced as well too, and that's the countershaft seal leaking oil. I noticed some oil leaking out right around my front sprocket and did some research on it, and a ton of reports are out there about these seals going bad. It's a relatively quick fix, easy fix too, but I don't know what's going on or why it's happening with so many bikes. But if you're a TPI owner and it hasn't happened to you yet, it might be a good idea to pick up a replacement kit. And the last common issue that you see is complaints mainly about these TPI bikes that they don't come with spark plugs. I get it. I don't know why they don't. You know, a lot of places require them, so you have to go out and upgrade your pipe. I mentioned already in the video that you can get an insert for it, but people say it doesn't run right with them in it, or it's blocking it up. So I just think for these TPI bikes, we know how people are riding them. They should come with them, or at least give owners the option to. So that wraps up the 5 most common issues with TPI bikes. I've experienced a few of them, and I've seen a ton of reports on the ones that I haven't experienced. And maybe I will. I still have relatively low hours. I've only owned it for about 6 months now, so it could potentially come up. All right, the final part of this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things I like about this bike and some of the things that I don't like quite as much. The first thing is my first two-stroke, and I absolutely love how low of an RPM that it can lug at. I know TPIs do a phenomenal job with this. I've ridden some other two-strokes, of course they're great compared to four-strokes too, but the TPI just does it so well. I'm not a great rider, so being able to have these bikes lug so low in a higher gear really helps me out on the trail. The second thing I really like specifically about the TPI bikes is their, I'll call it semi-linear power band for a two-stroke. It's got a ton of power in it, but it never feels like you're just, that classic two-stroke power band where all of a sudden just gonna try to rip you off of it. Yes, they have a ton of power, no denying that. But coming from a four-stroke, it feels, like I call it, semi-linear, and I think that's a huge perk to these TPI bikes. The third thing that I really like about it is the suspension. For hard enduro and enduro riding, it's very flush, it's very forgiving. Obviously you're not going to be wanting to go really fast through loops on it or hit huge jumps on it. It's not what it's made for. But in my opinion, and for enduro riding, I think the suspension's actually pretty good. I like the PDS shock on there. Don't have to worry about any linkage. It makes maintenance pretty easy too. And yeah, overall it's pretty good. Some other things I like about the bike just in general, and I think, so I came from a Japanese four-stroke bike, got a Yamaha before this, loved it, but this bike just feels so nimble and light compared to that. It's like 30 pounds lighter than my previous bike. The weight feels lower on it. Everything about it feels so narrow. You can just grip it, turn, so much easier. So overall, the bike is great. Another thing specifically related to TPI that I like, of course, is the oil being separated and not having to mix gas if you're lazy like me, but it doesn't use a ton of oil. So I think some people have reported way less than what KTM anticipates you using. Hopefully that's not to an oil pump failure or anything like that, but every couple rides I fill it up and I'm good to go. And the last thing on my list of likes is the fuel efficiency. So I know some people go on really long rides, and something I always talk about, trying to get a bigger tank on there. And maybe it's because it's on a carb bike or it's fuel injected, so you're technically using less gas, but they do a little bit better on it than carb bikes. So that's another big perk to the TPI in my opinion. And now for my cons list with the TPI bikes, and it's actually a really short list. First off, I'll just sum it up. All the common issues that come with those 5 that I mentioned earlier, that's the biggest con. The other one is more of a preference thing. I'm about 5'11", so it's not a huge deal to me, but specifically with the XC-W, the PDS shock sits a little bit higher than some of the other models. So that's just one thing to consider whenever you're looking at the XC-W versus the TE or the XC. All right, so that wraps up my 2020 TPI review. We went through some of my recommended upgrades, some issues, modifications, and then some pros and cons. If you liked the video, please subscribe, hit that like button, and thanks for watching.